Mountaineer Nation, it has been a fantastic last 3 days, so I am smiling from ear to ear as both our football program and our men's basketball program capitalized and received commitments from its two top class of 2026 high school recruits in Kevin Brown for football and Miles Sadler for basketball. So thanks for tuning in to this edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports. And roster management, and recruiting, I absolutely love this. So in my travels from the great state of Arizona back home on Saturday, I was checking in on this in the airport. We were in flight, so I missed the commitment announcement by Sadler. Thought I would come on and make a video just specifically about that, but kind of was working on my video about the game day experience about Arizona. So, of course, today, fully tuned in to the Pat McAfee show to hear Kevin Brown's commitment. So I wanted to come in and weigh in on both of those commitments. So I am so ecstatic. The future is bright for the Mountaineer football and basketball programs. So let's talk about it first and foremost with Miles Sadler on Sunday committing to Ross Hodge in the West Virginia men's basketball program. Who is Miles Sadler? Point guard from Toronto, Canada, attending Bella Vista Prep School in Scottsdale, Arizona. Just 5'10", 165. But West Virginia beat out Oklahoma, Tennessee, UCLA, and Maryland for his services. He's number 23 on the ESPN SportsCenter Next Top 100 for the class of 2026, a 5-star according to 247 Sports' composite player rating, the best player, the number 26 best player in the nation, third best point guard in the nation, the highest rated player of the modern Rivals Scout, which is now 247, ESPN Internet recruiting era, higher than Oscar Shibwe in 2019, Devin Ebanks back in 2008. Now, the recruiting services don't go all the way back to Jonathan Hargett, and that was like right when I was kind of early, preteen getting into Mountaineer basketball at that point in time. My fandom of West Virginia basketball really didn't start until the Beeline era, just because I was so young at that time. And I know some fans have kind of weighed in on some of the other posts out there talking about how Hargett was probably the number one recruit West Virginia's ever, maybe ever got, or you'd have to go all the way back to the 50s with West Virginia having the logos and Jerry West to get him. But anyway, Miles Sadler, incredibly highly rated, awesome prospect. And here, don't take it just from me. Take it from Canadian national basketball scout Joe Musa, who said this about Sadler: one of the most gifted guard prospects to come out of Canada in recent years. When describing Sadler's game, cliche buzzwords don't do him justice. Simply put, he's a basketball genius, artist, and savant. What he has simply can't be taught. How he processes the game, sees things before they develop, and picks apart defenses, either with his passing or scoring ability, is pro level. That it factor could very well take him all the way. And so here's my Fox analysis on Sadler. I was watching some of his tape. I think it was either on Rivals or Huddle or somewhere. And the first, few plays that were on his Huddle tape truly didn't do the man justice. Because I was like, okay, all right, he's a point guard. I see players drive and distribute and do all these things, especially on the, what's it called? All AAU level all the time kinds of thing. Then I saw the boy pick up and shoot, and I went, okay. He is like the reincarnation, what feels like, of Trae Young, is probably the best way to describe it. I think trying to compare anyone to Steph Curry is just Steph Curry is on such a different level that it's not fair. But Trae Young, for Mountaineer fans who got to see a lot of him during his day, is one season at Oklahoma. Oh my goodness, Sadler can pick up from anywhere. If he gets enough of a break on a defender, he will pull back, he will pull up, and he will hit the shot. It is incredibly impressive. If you watch some of his tape, go out there and you'll see what I'm talking about. So why that makes it incredibly lethal for West Virginia basketball moving forward is spacing. We saw this. It was such a breath of fresh air, I feel like, from the old Bob Huggins offensive system, which was just completely pack it in. Then we saw a bit of it last year with the Darren DeVries offense. Still, I think we're starting to kind of see the offense evolve a little bit of Ross Hodge. I said whenever I talked about West Virginia's recruiting and overhaul of the roster last spring that I think that he really loves to utilize high, ball screens at the top of the key. So working on more of that spacing than what Huggins gave you, but less, at least on what I've saw from North Texas, than what DeVries gave to you. But we're seeing that already. Go back to the last Thursday's Backyard Brawl with Jasper Howard and how well he's able to do with Brennan Lorient off the pick and roll. So that's exactly what I'm seeing out of Miles Sadler's game. He will be able to start the offense around midcourt, use any type of ball screen at the top of the key, either to drive and distribute to shooters out for three, take it himself. There's so many different things that you can do when you have the kind of spacing like we see in the NBA game. And that is what is coming now to Morgantown with him leading the charge of the offense. We have, I think, a couple of people, one predominantly, but it doesn't hurt whatsoever that his high school teammate at Bella Vista Prep, Alu Diem, a center, 6'10", 200, has already committed to West Virginia. 4-star, top 150 player in the nation. He will be the next, power forward center for West Virginia as early as perhaps next year. I think trying to see how that 1-2 game kind of translates once Sadler comes in. But I mean, you heard it from Sadler, his quotes on his commitment video this past Sunday is he wanted to play early. He wanted to get onto the floor, and that is the promise that it sounds like that Coach Ross Hodge made to him, that he's going to be a focal point of the team next year, and probably the day one starting point guard once Jasper Howard moves on in graduation after this season. So that helps, but I really would think the number one person to credit here is a new assistant, I almost said head again, new assistant coach in his first year, Yusuf Ali. He's coming over from Arizona State. Prior to that, he was an assistant assistant coach at Simon Fraser University in Canada. He founded and was the head coach of the Toronto Basketball Academy from 2018 to 2021. I'm sure stayed in contact through those years, early high school years with Miles Sadler. And both Alu Diem probably as well, if he was a part of no, I'm sorry. I don't think Diem was a part of it, but a former coach of Sadler's. So having that kind of connection with an assistant coach now on West Virginia's staff that you have familiarity with, you have that type of relationship, you have a teammate going there as well. I think it was signed, sealed, and delivered. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to what the NIL dollars and cents. That's not public information. But to now say that West Virginia's if you take a look at who they have in their commits, as well as their returners with eligibility for next year, you're looking in some sort of a combination at guards between Sadler, Amir Jenkins, who was a highly rated 4-star recruit, who's now already getting playing time with this year's team, Morris Ugasuk, coming over from South Carolina, who's contributing off the bench, and also Kingston Whitty, a 3-star 170th best player in the nation. So there's your 4 guards that you can build upon when all is said and done. If you don't consider some of the guys who are like the deep bench, West Virginia has 9 already to play with for next year with eligibility, in case anyone else transfers or goes pro or anything like that. But what a foundation. Of course, have Jaden Forsyth, DJ Thomas, who are contributing as freshmen already. Thomas is off to an incredibly hot start, more so than I ever thought. He would come in his first 5 games and already score the way he has and contribute. So just kind of shows the kind of talent that Coach Ross Hodge can find anywhere in the world. And then, of course, Aludiem. You still got Evans Barning Jr. at the forward position alongside Thomas and Abraham Oyedir. So I think bigger picture, when you go into the Miles Sadler commitment, I think as it relates to West Virginia, with the backing financially, but then just also the brand recognition that West Virginia is trying to assert itself as a national power in college basketball, or at least a national player that they had been under Coach Huggins, that, again, Ross Hodge can get top-end talent anywhere, and this is what sets such a good foundation when you bring over assistant coaches who have connections to either current players or high-end recruits, in this case in Diem and Sadler with Yusuf Ali, so that he can start to establish himself, focus on the wins and losses, focus on this year's team. That's really what it comes down to moving forward, is now how far can he take this team, especially important wins in the month of March. April would be even better, wink, wink, but can then build upon that in the future. He has set an incredible foundation, I feel like, over the course of these last 10 months or however long it's been, since March, that West Virginia didn't get into the NCAA tournament. So I think with a stable foundation, finally had Ren Baker at the athletic director position, hiring Ross Hodge, giving him the resources and NIL this past spring to go utilize, build up this roster for this year and build the depth. And now you're seeing what Coach Hodge can go use with those connections that he has through Yusuf Ali, and going and getting a guy like Sadler. So I am incredibly excited. I think basketball is a little bit ahead as of right now than football. And I still think there are really high hopes for this 2025-26 men's basketball season, that we're going to see the Mountaineers back into the NCAA tournament. But for right now, I just really love the roster, this year's roster construction. And then looking ahead, I mean, you got 9 there, so they'll probably still fill in 3 more, either through the high school ranks, even though I think tomorrow is the last day of the early signing period for basketball, so they can sign more players in April. You have to wait. That's such a long time, in my opinion. Otherwise, working on the transfer portal recruits and get some of them, upperclassmen. Because right now, if you're thinking about next year's roster of being, starting lineup being maybe Sadler, Amir Jenkins, Jaden Forsythe, DJ Thomas, Aludiem, those are all freshmen and sophomores right there. So you maybe want to add a veteran player or two. But I just love the way that Ross Hodge is doing it. So let's transition, 12 minutes in now. Let's talk about football. And this was such an exciting Tuesday with offensive tackle Kevin Brown, 6'5", 285 from Harrisburg High School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, committing on the Pat McAfee show itself. You kind of figured, if you're connecting some of the dots, and Ohio State fans wouldn't tell you different, or Penn State fans, that you kind of figured, signed, sealed, delivered later this weekend or whenever it was announced, that he would be coming on the Pat McAfee show, that it was going to be an announcement that West Virginia would be. Oh, and I think it was Steve Wiltfong from On3 who also had a crystal ball prediction that Brown would be a Mountaineer. So, you could kind of you would have been shocked, I feel like, if he would have, thrown on a red T-shirt for Ohio State. You kind of figured this was coming, but I'm not anticlimactic at all. It was incredible. So let me tell you a little bit first about Brown, and then we can talk about what were some of the revelations that were mentioned. And I think it was about a 5-minute segment or so with Kevin Brown. So a 4-star according to the Rivals industry ranking, the 53rd best player in the nation, the 2nd interior offensive lineman in the country, and 2nd best overall player in the state of Pennsylvania. The 4th highest rated recruit in WVU football history, according to earsports.com, which takes into consideration recruits as far back as the year 1999. Now, who knows what Major Harris or, others on the great pantheon, Mount Rushmore of West Virginia football would be. And, we all know some of the heroes who were, 2-star, 3-star recruits who came out of the woodwork, built themselves up. I'm thinking first and foremost Steve Slayton and Pat White, who then ended up becoming like 5-star players. So rankings don't mean anything until we actually see the proof in the pudding, and what you produce at the college level. But holy crap, this was a big get. Son of WVU football class of 2002, offensive lineman Tim Brown. WVU, though, I feel like can really thank Penn State for its decision to fire head coach James Franklin as for the reason for Brown reopening his recruitment and entertaining the idea of WVU as his college destination, as he was as firm of a Penn State commit as they had in their 2026 high school recruiting class. Some of the revelations that were revealed on that Pat McAfee show was that as soon as his sophomore year, Brown had already committed to Penn State. Now, he had a bona fide standout sophomore year in high school, then got injured and missed most of his junior season, I think, which also affected his wrestling career. And now, by the time he was a senior, he was a burgeoning 4-star commit that was getting national attention. The things that were mentioned by Brown himself on the McAfee show that just, oh my gosh, is now, making its waves across the WVU media and other YouTube content creators like myself. And I was trying to cross-reference the years with his age, considering he's probably like 18, that he said that former head coach Dana Holgerson kicked them out of practice. So I'm assuming, and this is, goes back to one of the reasons why West Virginia did not feel so bad with Dana Holgerson leaving the football program, was that it sounded like he turned his back on all of the Big East era players. McAfee's talked about this before and now kind of confirmed here. So it sounds like his dad, Tim, and Kevin tried attending some sort of practice or something during the era of Coach Holgerson. So if it was as late as 2018, Holgerson's last season there, Kevin's probably 11, if I'm doing the math right, or something like that. So he's in his early, intermediate school years or something like that, or early middle school years, however they do their school system out there in Harrisburg, and turned him away. So another case in point of evidence of how Holgerson was just such an awkward fit for WVU and did really burn a lot of bridges with a lot of people. And then he said, this is Kevin, said that when he attended a summer camp in his sophomore year at West Virginia, then offensive line coach Matt Moore hadn't even seen his high school tape. So a couple of things that come away from this that I have to say. One, if there isn't already a database, and me working for a college, we have systems like this who track legacy players or legacy students. So if their parents have any, or family have any sort of connection to W&J, if West Virginia doesn't already have that, and they're not tracking all of the up and coming recruits of former players, then that is an egregious error, I feel like, on somewhere in the recruiting staff. And I think that can span all three administrations, Holgerson into Brown, and I don't hope it's not going on with the present day. Truly, I'm not. So that's an egregious error right there. So second thing I want to say is, now I'm going to have to recant what I had to say earlier in the season. I think it was even as late as the UCF game when I was waving a white flag on the 2025 season already, that Matt Moore should have been retained as offensive line coach under this new staff and head coach Rich Rodriguez, instead of going with Jack Bicknell, because he could have kept Kyle Altuner, Tomas Remak in Morgantown. That's unacceptable. I mean, for a guy who, I know how these, coaches have to work years in advance in recruiting. I mean, so much recruiting is now done basically from 8th grade up until the summer of your senior year. You get all those recruits by your summer of senior year, so then they go into their fall, season, and they sign by the early signing day. So it works earlier and earlier in the recruitment. So that really, it sounded like put a bad taste in the mouth of Kevin Brown, who then, developing this relationship with James Franklin and the Penn State coaching staff. And Penn State, let's be honest, has been a much better program, prior to this season, even though they have pretty identical records, at least this year. But, looking in the past, like, it made total sense why Kevin Brown would have picked Penn State. Harrisburg kid right there, to State College. He's right in their backyard, builds this relationship and commits. I mean, they are kind of an NFL factory. Not winning national championships or Big Ten championships for the most part, but I mean, putting players into the NFL galore. So it make total sense right there, even though he was a legacy. And his dad kind of stayed off him, let him do his own kind of recruiting journey, and didn't want to spoil anything that he was building this awesome relationship with Penn State. So from that perspective, I totally understand it and credit Tim for that, for letting his son kind of carve his own path and do that. But then the second Penn State fired James Franklin, bam, it sounds like he jumped all in, wanted Kevin to be a Mountaineer all along. I love that his grandma took off her jacket and revealing a Mountaineer t-shirt underneath. And then holy freaking crap, can you believe on live national television there was a freaking couch burning? That was just absolutely hysterical. That Kevin, I guess Kevin was texting back and forth with McAfee saying like, hey, I want to do something special. And he goes outside and he was just giddy with excitement. It was just really cool. Just kind of shows even though these kids are getting paid, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to play the sport couldn't be any more professionalized in history than it ever has before. And it's this slimy enterprise out there with all that happens in the background of the sport. But you could just tell how excited that Kevin was to be committing to West Virginia and to really start this new chapter. And I just think that he is going to be the rock on which head coach Rich Rodriguez builds his offensive line of the future. He visited back on Tuesday, October 28th, and apparently hit it off with the coaching staff, including Rodriguez, but also offensive line coach Jack Bicknell Jr., soaking in the vision that WVU has for him to develop into an NFL caliber player and perhaps starting right tackle from day one. Brown did officially visit, this is the interesting part, did officially visit Ohio State on November 11th for the Ohio State-Penn State game. So I know that, and take another legacy commit here, Ohio State currently has Chris Henry Jr. committed. How many recruits over the years, high-end caliber recruits, has Ohio State beat out, contiguous state, West Virginia, for top-end talent? It sickens me. It's why I'm no fan of the Buckeyes whatsoever. But it's just amazing to me that even with the legacy component, that West Virginia was able to beat, and think about the financials, too, that like Ohio State, biggest athletics department budget in the country, that West Virginia could make an offer that West Virginia could beat out Ohio State for a recruit. That's, put that on a headline right now in an article. Man, that could be a whole separate video right there. I'm extremely ecstatic, and these are the kinds of breaks that West Virginia as a program needed to turn this program around. That West Virginia was not getting under head coach Neil Brown, and I'll argue even under Dana Holgorsen. Not to go on a whole epilogue on Holgorsen, but one of the major reasons why that Holgorsen did not work out here, couldn't beat Oklahoma, couldn't beat Oklahoma, and the reason why is because he couldn't ever develop his own quarterback. Had Will Grier. Unfortunately, Grier gets injured at the end of the 2017 season. And in 2018, the Oklahoma State and Oklahoma games happened. But those, it just seemed like West Virginia was on such a, cursed basically from 2018 and beyond. And now this is the kind of break. Thank you, Penn State, for this happening and firing James Franklin. Hopefully Matt Sieg will follow from Fort Cherry. And then West Virginia can get this player in Kevin Brown of this caliber. So the ultimate question, I guess, is does Brown now have, does he have the chops to be a day one Power 4 starter? Well, let me give you this quote from someone who is more qualified than myself, 24/7 sports director of scouting, Andrew Ivins. So he says about Kevin Brown, Brown must continue to add weight. And if you look at him, in photos, he's built like a freaking Greek god. It's like Hercules out there. The Giga Chad, as some of my West Virginia on Sports Illustrated guys are saying. So he's going to have to put on weight, which, okay, at 6'5", 285, he's on a freaking great start, but should be viewed as a potential multi-year starter and possible difference maker in the starting five for a college football playoff hopeful. So Andrew Ivins was already thinking that he was going to be headed to Penn State, Ohio State, someone like that. His testing metrics and weight room numbers, which he apparently benches 400 and squats 600. His mom was a power lifter, and his dad played, again, Division I, at that point in time, Power 6, but played at West Virginia and then had a cup of coffee in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, completing the quote, because of his testing metrics, weight room numbers likely will be very attractive to NFL scouts one day. So there's already a path, according to these recruiting services scouts, that destined to be an NFL player at some point in time. And if you, like I mentioned, let's talk about Wyatt Milam, higher rated player at this point in time of his recruiting than Wyatt Milam, who turned out to be a 4-year starter, all Big 12 caliber player, and a third-round draft pick. Or you can even go far back as a name. You'll probably, I remember him, Josh Jenkins, back in 2008, 4-star recruit, 210th best player in America. Those two guys, I know West Virginia's had a lot of talented players, namely Zach Frazier, also along that same time. But Frazier wasn't the kind of highly rated, recruit that those two guys were out of high school. Those are the two best, quote-unquote, offensive line recruits West Virginia has gotten in the internet recruiting era, so basically take the year 2000. So just goes to show what kind of a player, I think the proof is in the pudding, that he can be. So I have not yet seen enough from Malik Agbo to feel confident about him being a starter. Xavier Bosley has not emerged yet as a starter after 2 seasons in Morgantown. You thought he was going to challenge Nick Malone at the starting right tackle position last year, and now this year, didn't know if he was dealing with some sort of injury. My friend Mountaineer Paul was telling me, hadn't heard much from Xavier Bosley and didn't know if he was dealing with an injury or just kind of falling down the depth chart, or head coach Rich Rodriguez just wasn't, not seeing it in him or something like that. And maybe that's why he transferred in 2024. But he hasn't emerged yet after 2 seasons in Morgantown as a starter. Michael Clay only played in 3 games this season to preserve his red shirt, and Cooper Young missed the whole season due to a foot injury up to this point in time. I don't know if he's coming back for Texas Tech or he's just done already. But those are kind of your other options at tackle as of you have on the roster right now. And hearing from the rumor mill of what Kevin Brown is being compensated in NIL, woo! I mean, let's just give you some numbers here. The rumor was he was getting paid $800,000 at Penn State for his NIL package. I am aware of a recruit who is just up there, the same caliber as Brown is in the country, thanks to my cousin, who his kids going to a high school game was competing against the school that this player plays for. I will just give you a leak, and I guess he is committed to South Carolina, and he was being entertained $800,000 in an NIL package. So you can just imagine what West Virginia, to beat out Penn State and to beat out Ohio State, had to financially commit to for Kevin Brown's services. So odds are Kevin Brown will be the highest paid player on West Virginia's offensive line this upcoming fall. over fifth-year guy in Landon Livingston, fourth-year guy in Nick Cray, second-year potentially starter in Donovan Haslam. So that's a new interesting component that, is going to be coming down the pipeline. And this is something that we've talked about, at least I have on this program, or you've kind of probably heard elsewhere, but West Virginia has not been in the luxury of this position as of yet, as of the post, NIL era, since that's become legal starting after the 2020 season. Was how would West Virginia, would they operate more like a small market franchise and try and, get some of these, 3-star recruits that they hopefully develop over time and you would be able to compensate them over time? Or would they try and go after 4- and 5-star high school products, pay them early, and then would they be able to continue to compensate them or even compensate them more than what their starting base value was? So that's what's now the piece of the pie that General Manager Chuck Lilly and others within WVU, the administration, will have to figure out. But if there is a player that you make this kind of financial commitment into, it's Kevin Brown, a WVU freaking legacy. Again, built like a freaking Greek god. I mean, how many car commercials for Toothman Ford is he going to probably do? Or Parmar stores, or you name that. I mean, put him on a billboard and it's going to sell tickets. He is going to be probably the most desired freshman by all of the female students down there in Morgantown this upcoming fall. Good-looking kid is what I'm trying to say here. So I just hope, though, that this influences senior offensive lineman from Nitro High School 3-star Deron Parks to jump on the bandwagon, join the Mountaineers so that they can be a pair together on the offensive line. And others, like I've already said, Matt Sieg, who is another Penn State recruit, I guess is visiting next weekend for the Texas Tech game, is kind of also entertaining offers from Notre Dame, Indiana, and Pitt at a safety position, and West Virginia's got open safety positions that they're going to need for next year. So it's just like, this is, I feel like, a domino that you're going to hopefully this means the better things to come for West Virginia football recruiting, both in high school and transfer portal commit recruiting, that shows like, wait a second, West Virginia's freaking serious. I don't know yet if West Virginia is going to be the like Texas Tech of a year ago and go all in, with this money that I don't know where it's come from. Now, I am going to make a show probably later this week or over this weekend, because I know this week is when the coaching staff is all getting together. Coach Rodriguez talked about this, I think, in his press conference before the Arizona State game, or maybe the game before that at Colorado, that they were going to use this week to evaluate the whole roster, going to see who they want to retain off this roster. I'm sure they're bringing in, this is going to be a fun exercise for this video. So bringing in General Manager Chuck Lilly, and I'm sure some of the other money people and power brokers, and figuring out how are they going to put this roster together and how are they going to keep it within the, $15-ish million now $20.5 million cap that West Virginia Athletics has for all of its sports. But if West Virginia football is going to be getting, say, 75% of the $20.5 million, so that do the numbers there, that's $15 million. How are you going to pay the players who you want to retain? I'm assuming those are guys like Scotty Fox, Jaheim White, Cam Vaughn, the two guys already mentioned on the offensive line, so on and so forth. So I'm going to talk about that on the show. Are there players that maybe you can now get away with not investing NIL dollars into, but still compensating them with a full scholarship? How much are you investing into all of these high school class of 2026 kids, Kevin Brown included, and probably getting the highest dollar figure of anyone for the next year's 2026 roster? And then what are you going to spend in transfer portal recruiting, understanding you still have a lot of needs to fill on this roster because of so many guys who were one-year caliber guys that you got for this year's team, including the whole freaking secondary, 2 linebackers, some pieces on the defensive line. Offense, not so much. It's going to kind of flip-flop from what this last year's experience. So as of right now, going back to Kevin Brown, he's clearly the crown jewel of Coach Rodriguez's first high school recruiting class in his second stint in Morgantown. And I just think that this was a sign of good things to come, good fortune. I mean, like, this is one of those ones you have to get. That other programs, I'm thinking, like a Penn State or a Notre Dame, so many other, USC, they get those kind of legacy players annually. You know, dad played here, uncle played here, grandfather played here. Like Bryce Ford Wheaton was a double legacy. So like that's what you need, is to keep that kind of pipeline, you know, coming through. And that's what Coach Rodriguez even said during his segment with Pat McAfee, is that's what they want to try and do. He kind of joked that how old he is, that now former players' kids are coming up through the system. But that's hopefully what kind of the culture and the vibe going throughout Mountaineer Nation. Because, I mean, how many times would fans get criticized on social media for saying, oh, you know, got to get the gang back together, put Pat White at a assistant, you know, quarterbacks coach, and put, you know, now Noel Devine at assistant running backs coach, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's happening, y'all. And I can see a really nice blueprint among this coaching staff. Now, we'll have to see how that, you know, turns out in wins and losses and the outcomes for 2026, but that's, you know, a long way away. But it's just like, you really like the culture and base of the Mountaineers who made their mark 20 years ago, who are now still influencing today's program. The Holgerson through Neil Brown era, poof, can be kind of a blip on the annals of history of West Virginia football, and now we're getting back to our roots, and it's starting it out with a player like Kevin Brown. So I think he's really symbolizing the start of a new chapter, the hard edge movement into 2026 and beyond. So I'd love to know how you feel. How great on a scale of 1 to 10 do you feel? Leave your comments here on YouTube. Please like this video if you've liked it so more people can see it across YouTube. That really helps out the algorithm. I'm trying to really build up this channel as best as humanly possible, and I'd love to have you a subscriber to my channel if you like videos like this, focusing on basketball, focusing on football, baseball we'll talk about as we get closer to the spring, and so much more. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia, spot the ball, let's go, baby, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. Take care.